In this video, I'm going to let you in on a few secrets that teachers use to teach your child to develop their comprehension and to read, and a few things that all teachers really wish parents did more of at home. So stick with me. I will quickly race you through a few things that will help. First of all, who am I to tell you? Well, I'm an experienced teacher, English subject lead as well. I've also been a publisher and an editor, so I've seen the other side of the story. And I'm now a full-time tutor and also an author of a 5-star reviewed book on Amazon, which you can see here. So let's get started. I'm going to cover these 3 things quickly with you today. Getting started reading with your child in the right way, how a teacher does it, and then I'm going to give you a demonstration. So you're probably already reading at home with your child, but quite possibly you're doing it in a passive way. So by this I mean perhaps you're sitting next to your child and you're listening to them read. You probably help correct them if their pronunciation isn't quite right or if they don't know how to decode a word. You probably help them. But apart from that, you're probably taking quite a passive role. The TV might even be on in the background, or maybe your phone beeps every so often. That's a passive approach. What teachers would be really grateful for is if parents took a more active role when reading with their children. And I'm going to explain what that looks like. First of all, you may have reluctant readers, or you might have quite enthusiastic readers that want to go off and read by themselves. Either way, what we want is for your child right up until year 6 to be happy to sit and read with you, because that's where we're going to see the most growth and development. Reading time with your child can be a magical time, and to create that sort of background and those occasions will give you memories for years to come. I know I have much older teenagers now, and I would love to sit on the sofa with them again and read a book. So turn off the TV, put the phone away, cuddle up, get a blanket, get the hot chocolate out, get some popcorn, treat it almost like movie night. Make it a special event that your child asks to return to. That's the best way to get started. A relaxed child is a much more able learner. So we want a relaxed, happy, comfortable state before we start. Now, thinking about how we teach reading in school, and particularly comprehension, there are 2 main things that we look for: author intent and reader impact. And through all of our comprehension questions, we are basically covering those 2 things. Why did the author choose to do that? Or why did the author choose to write it that way? Why did the author choose to have that particular character? And what impact does any of it have on you as a reader? They're the 2 main things. No matter what you do and how you read with your children, keep those 2 things in mind: author intent and reader impact. And that underpins everything that I'm about to explain. You may have come across vipers in one of your reading presentations at school, or you may not. Many schools use this approach because it's memorable and it's easy in the classroom to ensure that a teacher mentally ticks off every type of comprehension question possible. And here is what they stand for. I'm going to run through them very quickly. V is for vocabulary, asking questions about what this word means or what we could replace it with, but also think more broadly: what figurative language is there, for example? Can you find me a noun or an adjective? Inference. Inference is reading between the lines. So, for example, if a character hugged her coat around her, we could ask the inference question: what's the weather like? Well, it's probably cold or windy or wet because she's hugging her coat around her. That's inference. Predict. What happens next? Always based on the story, though. So, using something within the story to make a logical prediction. Explain. Explain just means adding a little more information and detail to what a child thinks in terms of answering a question, often using evidence in the text. And by that, we mean an example of something that's actually written in the story or the non-fiction piece, whatever it is they're reading. Retrieve is the easiest type of question. Can you find what the father's name was? Or how old is the little boy in the story? So where things are explicitly said, In a story, and we're just looking for retrieval questions, that's all of the R. Compared to S, which is probably one of the hardest. For younger children, we call it sequence. For older children, we call it summarize. And this is about either sequencing the events in the story for younger children, and the particularly difficult skill is summarizing for older children. If you've ever asked a child, "Oh, what's that book about that you've just read?" you'll probably get an immense description of the first chapter at best, and then you'll be there for ages, or you won't really get much after that. So summarizing, giving just the main points, probably one of the hardest things children learn. Now, before I move on to a demonstration, if you look in the link below, you will find I have given you a printout of lots of example questions you can use for each of Vipers at home. So my final thing to go through is a demonstration. Here is a piece of text. I'm going to read it through, and then I'm going to show you some example questions that I might ask as I'm reading with a child. And I'm going to stop as I go along. I'm not going to read it all in one go. I'm going to treat this exactly as if I was sitting with a child right now. The wind whistled through the trees. Ooh, wind whistled. Ooh. They both begin with a wh sound. What is that called? Alliteration, that's right. The wind whistled through the trees, tugging at their branches like a playful giant. How does that sentence make you feel? Isn't it fun? Isn't it joyful? And tugging at their branches. Well, can wind actually tug? No, you're right, it can't. So this is an example of personification. Well done. Leaves spun in circles, racing each other across the playground. The air was full of movement. Ooh, what's that punctuation there? What do you think that's doing? That's right, it's a colon, and it's introducing what's to come. Fantastic. Hats flew off heads and hair whipped across faces. You're right, there is some more alliteration there. Isn't it enjoyable? Isn't it memorable? Sometimes the gusts were strong enough to make you stumble, but other times they felt gentle, like a secret whisper in your ear. The sky looked busy too, with clouds rushing along as if they had somewhere important to be. So I'm going to now take you through one question from each of Vipers. So V for vocabulary. What does the word gusts mean in the text? I for inference. How do you think the child feels about the windy day, and what clues tell you this? P. Prediction. If the wind keeps getting stronger, what might happen next? E. Explanation. Why do you think the writer compares the wind to a playful giant? R. Retrieval. What does the wind do to the leaves on the playground? And S. Summarize. In one sentence, describe what the passage says about a windy day. So, let's get started. Ideally, you will be sitting with your child at least 5 days out of 7 if they're in primary school, hearing them read. A good guide is 15 minutes if they're in Key Stage 1 or younger, and 30 minutes if they're in Key Stage 2. I know it's not possible every day. I completely understand. I'm a parent too, but that's a good target to have. Try to read together even until year 6. That might seem odd as children become older, and how you read with them will change. So, as they're in the older years in year 5 and year 6, if they're fluent readers, you may well find that you're just sitting next to each other and you're not actually interacting at all. You're reading and they're reading, and every so often one of you asks each other a question. Add some variety. So sometimes you want to read just for enjoyment and flow, and you don't want to keep stopping, as I did on the previous slide. You just want your child to enjoy the story and get hooked into it. Once they are hooked and enjoying it, then you can start to ask those Vipers questions. Rereading books is fine. Children actually really take a lot from rereading familiar stories, both emotionally, but also in terms of them practicing and rehearsing and comprehending in a different way, on a deeper level. If you've ever gone back and read a child's book yourself, I have many times because I enjoy them, you probably notice that as you get older, you take something different from the story. And that's true for children as well. What they may have enjoyed when they were first learning to read, they'll take something very different from a year or two after that when they're perhaps reading to their sibling. I hope you found this useful. If you did, please give it a like and share it with someone else who you think would also find this helpful. Thanks for listening.